as people are joining. Still have a handful of folks joining in. We'll get started in about a half a minute. Okay, welcome everyone to our joint presentation, UC Staff Looking Ahead, with updates from the chair of the UC Administrative Management Professionals Group, the staff advisor to the UC Regents, and the chair of the Council of University of California Staff Assemblies. I'm John Bodenschatz, and I'm chair-elect for CUCSA, and will be your host for this meeting. Thank you all for joining us. Those you'll hear from today and the groups they represent work hard to provide the staff voice and support throughout the UC system. Next slide, please. The Council of UC Staff Assemblies recognizes that our service occurs on the unceded territory of the indigenous peoples of California, and that these lands were and continue to be of great importance to them. Every member of our community has and continues to benefit from the use and stewardship of these lands. With respect and gratitude, we acknowledge and make visible our relationship to the original caretakers. We also recommend you use the following resources listed here to better understand the indigenous history of our state. So today we're going to hear, as I mentioned, from the organizations AMP, the staff advisor to the Regents, and the Council of the UC Staff Assemblies, and giving updates about what the organizations are working on and what they see coming up. We'll follow that by a Q&A session, and then we'll have some closing remarks. First up, we have Michael Austin, chair of UC AMP. Michael Austin is currently the financial and administrative officer at UC Riverside for the Departments of Art and History of Art. Prior to this, Michael has served in FAO roles for the departments including Comparative Literature and Languages, Hispanic Studies, and History. Combined, Michael possesses more than 17 years of service with the UC system. Prior to serving as chair of UC AMP, he served as a system-wide steering committee member for UC AMP, and similar leadership roles for UC Riverside's AMP. On his off time, he enjoys dangerous amounts of coffee and playing games online with his friends all over the country. Michael, take it away.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see you here. Just an update from AMP. We have our annual conference that's going to happen in April 16th through the 18th. So we encourage you all to go. More communication about that will be filtered out through your various campus representatives from the system-wide group. Our goal this year is, or our theme is amplifying connections, kind of reconnecting after these last 3 years of being virtual, remote, and our current hybrid model. So I do encourage you again to reach out to your local reps, and more information about that will be coming out soon. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next up, I'm honored to introduce Priya Lakireddy. UC Staff Advisor Priya Lakireddy currently serves as the Assistant Regional Director for the Central California Small Business Development Center Regional Network, which is a project under the UC Merced Office of Research and Economic Development Department, and is operated under contract in cooperation with the U.S. Small Business Administration. Since joining UC Merced in 2014, Priya has been an active member of their staff assembly, serving as president in the 2019-2020 year. As president, she was staff representative on the Search Advisory Committee for UC Merced's chancellor, planned and hosted a system-wide CUCSA meeting at UC Merced in March of 2020, collaborated with the Office of EDI and the Chancellor's Organization to introduce virtual leadership chats as a way for staff to directly hear from and connect with senior leaders on campus during the early months of the pandemic. Priya would also serve as a delegate to the Council of the University of California Staff Assemblies for 2 years, working in the flexible work culture and succession planning subcommittees. For her service, Priya received UC Merced's 2020 Staff Excellence Award for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and was a Kevin McCauley Outstanding Staff Award recipient in March 2021. Beyond UC, Priya is an active member of the Merced community and was recently elected to the Merced School District Board of Education in November 2022. Priya holds a BS in Management of Information Systems from the University of Missouri, St. Louis, and an MA in Education with an emphasis on Higher Education Administration and Leadership from Fresno State. The floor is yours, Priya.
I'm losing practice on Zoom already. Thank you, and a warm welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us during what likely is your lunch hour, and I hope everyone is safe. I know there's been a lot of flooding in our state, and 10 minutes down the road from me, a whole town of 4,000 people were evacuated. So I just hope everyone's staying safe. And if you need any assistance, please reach out to your local staff assemblies, as they may be able to provide you with any connections with HR and other resources. Right now, I am in almost 6 months into being a staff advisor to the UC Board of Regents, and I, along with Joe, are working on this year building relationships with the Regents. A lot of what we do is relationship based, and if you want to have influence, you have to have relationships with the Regents, the Office of the President staff, the local leadership, and all the various associations that we have on our campuses. So our goal is to really connect with folks this year. And one of the things we are doing, we requested, is to have a town hall with President Ray, because since he started during the pandemic, really has not able to have a chance to go to all campuses and meet with staff. And so we feel like this was a great opportunity for all of us to ask the questions we want. There is a link, and I'll post it before I leave. So we really want you to ask staff-related questions, and hope that not only the president, but our leadership on our campuses and staff know what are the issues that really staff want us to think about, and where we are headed as an employer, one of the largest employers in the state. How can we help staff and with all the issues we're having? So that's happening, and I'm actually going to be on the UC Berkeley campus on January 23rd doing our campus visits. We're a little late in doing campus visits because the last 6 months, so much sickness in my family, and just did not have the opportunity to get out. But you will hear more information. We plan to visit UC Berkeley, UC Irvine, Office of the President, and maybe one other campus before my term ends on June 30th. And you'll hear soon about the next application round going for the staff advisor to the UC Board of Regents. I would encourage you all to apply. With Lucy's advocacy in mind, we were able to get a 15% stipend for being in this role. Before, it was just a volunteer role. As you know, faculty that serve on the Board of Regents, they get a 2-year break from their teaching assignments, and students get their tuition paid for 2 years. So as a staff advisor, although we are non-voting members, we still are at the table representing in different committees and offering staff perspective. So we felt like this also needed to be compensated. And thanks to the Vice Chancellor back at UCLA and his advocacy, we were able to get 15% stipend. That's a huge percentage to serve. But it's only the beginning, and I wish that other roles in our system will also get compensated for the work that they do. It's hard to do volunteer work, and every bit helps. Those are my comments, and during our Q&A, I'm happy to answer more questions. And once the application goes out, Joe and I will do a similar virtual meeting so that we can answer your questions about what it really takes to be a staff advisor to the UC region. So those are my updates, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya. Next, we'll hear from Dennis with CUCSA. A member of the UC community since 2015, Dennis McIver currently serves as Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Program Manager for the UC Office of the President, which he began in October of 2022. He possesses more than 15 years of experience in higher education that includes student advising, admissions, academic records, and academic scheduling. Prior to joining UCOP, Dennis spent nearly 7 years at UC Riverside, where he was a staff assembly president and Black Faculty and Staff Association chair. During this time, he established UCR Staff Scholarships, which connects staff scholars, which connects staff pursuing education while working. He also founded UCR Staff Affinity Group Alliance, which connected campus staff leadership across organizations. His service also included committees such as the North District Naming Committee and Task Force on Campus Safety. Dennis earned a bachelor's degree from Loyola University, Maryland, where he was an inaugural recipient of the Geppie-Aikens Award. He also earned a master's degree from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County and University of Baltimore. He is currently a PhD student in leadership studies, where his research explores leadership development in higher education employees. Dennis, take it away.
Okay, thank you, John. And thank you all for joining us today. Really appreciate having a chance to share some updates with you. And so I'm Dennis McIver. I'm chair of the Council of UC Staff Assemblies. There's a debate as to whether or not it's CUCSA or CUCSA. Either or works. And I wanted to share some broader updates related to our organization this year. The main thing you need to know is that CUCSA has been around for nearly 50 years. The founding year was 1974, and so we're moving in on that golden number. We have a 30-member delegation that has members from all of our campuses, as well as Berkeley Lab, Agriculture and Natural Resources, and Office of the President. Much of the scope of our work focuses on policy covered staff, but many of the things we talk about can broadly be used in discussing all staff. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what we've been up to this year. When it comes to our focus, our priority this year has broadly been on the issue of retention, because system-wide, we've received indications that there are some issues when it comes to retaining our talented staff pool. And in fact, the system-wide level of vacancies is in the 5,000 number range for system-wide staff vacancies. And so that's creating a lot of pressure at all of our different locations. And when it comes to even the 2021 staff engagement survey, it reported at that point that almost half of staff were actively considering leaving UC. So that's what guided a lot of our concerns for this year. But we also realized that there's not one singular reason as to why people choose to leave. And we wanted to take a really encompassing look at all the different things that may prompt those decisions. We ended up opting to focus on 3: compensation, wellness, and the staff experience, as well as career advancement. And so I want to take a moment just to say that I appreciate the work we've seen so far, and specifically want to thank Jeremy Brooks, as well as Nathan McCall and Shira Minerd, who are 3 members of our delegation who have served as chairs for these groups. And our hope is to really create a broader vision of the things that we can do to address these 3 singular problems, and that will find its way to our local staff assemblies and to our locations in discussing how we can fix it going forward. We are going to have a town hall, as we do every quarter, to discuss updates. That will be happening in March, and we'll have a URL that comes up that you can share regarding that. And hopefully you'll have a chance to join us for that conversation. The other thing we're thinking about is the future of CUCSA, because in many instances with organizations, it can be driven by whoever's occupying the seat. And that's not necessarily the best way to move as an organization. And so we were able to have a team of our delegates look at creating a plan for the next 5 years. And it's meant so that way we can continue to build on the record of success that the organization has had. And so I do want to make sure I thank Jeremy Thacker, who has been leading that effort. Beyond that, we've been trying much harder to empower our locations. And a big part of that has been by offering more training and workshops around it. They're called CUCSA chats, and they happen practically every month. And the topics have included everything from finding your voice to time management to how you leverage these leadership opportunities, whether it's this, AMP, staff advisor, any of those things for personal success, but then also topics like using data and assessment. And the point is to provide some tools that can be used by our locations for the long term. The good news is all of that is on our YouTube page. And so if anyone's ever interested in seeing the topics, you're welcome to checking that out there. We've also tried much harder to build our outreach, because in many cases, I think that CUCSA has historically been the system level org, but I think we could have done better jobs when it comes to doing our outreach to locations as well as to partner groups. And one of the ways we did that was by setting up a monthly newsletter that you're all welcome to sign up for right now, plug. And it just shares updates as it relates to what's happening with the organization, as well as broader system level things that you may want to know about. The last thing that we've been focusing on is increasing our advocacy, not just for staffs in the scope of UC, but also for the UC in relation to places like the government, because we think that there's a lot of things we can do as a group of people to help move things forward. And so we've been laying down a lot of the infrastructure related to that. So broadly, that's what's been happening this year. It couldn't have happened without the great efforts and support of our delegation, as well as our past alumni delegates and our past chairs. We've had a lot of folks who've been willing to step up and help with our work. And so really do appreciate the folks who have been willing to bring their combined talents to the discussion. I did want to share 2 other events that are coming up that I thought you would be interested in hearing about. The first one will be happening on January 19th, so next Thursday. And as CUCSA chair, I'll have a chance to give some brief remarks to the UC Board of Regents. And it'll be discussing a bit of our work related this year. I'm not going to give too much away, you got to watch, but it'll be a few minutes during the board session between 8:30 and 9:20. I will note that there's always a possibility it may run past 9:20, so make sure that you have a little time just in case. But that'll be a chance to hear a little bit more of a deeper discussion about our concerns related to things for reasons. Anyway, the other thing that's coming up that I'm very excited to discuss is for Black History Month, we wanted to elevate and amplify some of the Black staff leaders in the history of UC. So we have a roundtable discussion happening on February 1st at 11:05. And the 4 panelists you see here have had very distinguished service records. And I found that often in UC history, we frame a lot of this work through faculty as well as students, and understandably so. But we've had some amazing staff members and leaders in general. And I think we've also had some amazing Black staff leaders that we could do more to talk about those stories and give a chance for them to have their flowers. So that's what this is about. I hope that if you have the opportunity, you'll join us. I'll share the link in chat in a moment. But that's just a chance to just do some more elevation and amplification of our staff, because they are the 3rd leg of the stool in higher education. And I think the more we can do to discuss that, the better. To close out my note, I would just add that on a local level, if you're interested in remaining engaged, I really encourage all of you to find opportunities to connect with your staff assemblies. We have a number of different ones all across our locations, and the more talent we bring to that, the more positive things we can do. So I did want to encourage everyone, if you had the opportunity, please check out your local staff assembly. The CUCSA website has all of their links as well. But those folks are doing the amazing work, often without any sort of compensation for it. So if you can find ways to plug in and support what they're doing, then I think it'll be much appreciated and you can have an impact. So that's all that I'll share. I will be quiet now, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis. So now we'll move into the question and answer session. Feel free to submit a question in the chat or go ahead and raise your hand.
And in the spirit of giving everyone some view, let's stop share, and that way we can see everybody.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
For our sister campuses that are being affected by the storms, are there any efforts to take up donations for faculty and staff that may need assistance?
Priya, was that you wanted to answer, or?
No, I was looking to see if any like local staff assembly leaders are on this call, or if they know any information. I think it's a really good suggestion, Shannon. I think if we can, or if you know any resources, please forward to Shannon.
And I'll say, well, at UCI, we're not impacted right now, but in the past when we've had wildfires, that's been something that had been coordinated. And you can look to your staff assembly to see about that. Some of it for our sake was coming from HR, and some of it was then, we discussed amongst staff assembly. So the staff assembly might be a good first start to find that out. Any other questions?
Looks like we have one from Amber.
Oh, very well.
Hi, Amber, UCLA. Something that's come up at our campus, among other things, is a question regarding parking scales. Since that's something that's like UC wide, I'm not sure if there have been conversations about structuring it in a tiered way, similar to like our benefits packages, where people who are making an income that's less than people who are making much more don't have to pay the exact same amount for parking, especially since some of those people have to come to campus because their jobs don't allow for remote work.
That's a great suggestion, and I will bring it up to somebody in the office of the president, Amber. I will.
And I'll hop in. That was a conversation that we did have at our last CUCSA meeting in December, and it came up. And one of the things that I will illustrate for folks online, some of the complexities with setting a system-wide pricing is some of the campuses utilize third-party vendors for their parking, especially in the Bay Area. So that would be a hurdle, but definitely something that we as CUCSA are discussing, as you know, it is a burden and it's a growing burden. And so how do we manage that as we move forward?
And I think topics like this would be great to call in and to make those comments during the public comment period. Students call, faculty call, and these are the types of comments that I think the region should be hearing from staff. So I would encourage you to make a public comment.
Thank you for the question, Amber. I have a question for the three of you, and go ahead and chime in, whoever wants to take it. What do you think is the biggest issue facing staff in this moment?
I mean, like Dennis was mentioning, I think staff retention is definitely on everyone's mind, and just taking up, doing additional jobs and not having a way to get compensated for it. And I think that's also another issue. And just overall salary increases being not, in 2020, we did not receive that raise. So these are the things that we're hearing, and morale also, right? When all of these things happen, and we're still in like this flux, and a lot of stuff is going on, and sickness is happening. And I know this year, like I said, the first 6 months have been terrible for me because it was like one sickness after the other. So having to do this and work remotely or going to person has just been a lot. And how do we get access to the resources that we need, and what does that look like? Is also some of the questions that I'm hearing or concerns.
Yeah, just to jump in on our end, it's being so short-staffed as far as just not only just the retention, just being short-staffed in general, and then staff taking on one or two additional jobs, and the burnout being real. And so staff morale, staff mental health is a big issue right now, because we're being stretched so thin, and oftentimes it doesn't feel like there's like a light at the end of the tunnel. And I think also we don't have unified messaging from UCOP. It's kind of every campus for themselves, when every campus is facing, they're all facing it in a different way. But I think overall, inflation, compensation, mental health, it's just snowballing into this bigger issue that needs to be addressed, or we're going to see the problems exacerbate even more so than they are now.
There's two things I would say. The first one is, I think that I completely agree with Priya and Michael that those are issues. And as a piece of that, I'm really deeply concerned about the overall wellness of our staff, because I think there's a significant amount of burnout and exhaustion, coupled with the frustration and the added work that's come over the last little bit. But then, so not only do you have all those pressures, not to mention your external pressures of being parents and family and having those obligations, but also seeing that compared to having the ability to still do well for yourself in your career. And so I think it's just creating this real sort of trap that's putting more pressure on our staff than ever. And so I think that we have to think more about what we can do to really show folks that they're cared for, and also create pathways for them to get the help that they need so that they can be in a good space. Because some of the strongest people I know are feeling the effects of this in this moment. And I don't think we're talking enough about that. So I'm very deeply concerned about the overarching wellness we have in this moment. In that spirit, I did want to invite Shira Minard, who's the chair of our committee on wellness, that we put together a little response form. And so Shira, if you'd like, please feel free to plop that into chat. And if any of you are comfortable speaking on that and what your experience is, we would invite you to share it there. And I'm going to be quiet because now Derek has something to ask.
I was just going to jump in it. I thought Michael framed some things really helpfully in terms of a lack of centralized value or oversight into how business units are operating. We see that even inside one campus, right? Like, so I'm in PB-Sci at UCSD, and we have staff who leave all the time to go to a different division because our staff is one of the only divisions that isn't allowed to run into a deficit, right? Every other division on campus is allowed to budget differently and get compensated for the same work at higher levels. And so there seem to be guide rails about how the university sets priorities for how you have to interact with students and how you have to interact with faculty. And it seems like there are some guide rails that would be helpful for how you have to interact with staff, or at least the baseline compensation or workload that is missing. And so I just thought I would echo that.
So I have another question that came in, and that is there a push to keep hybrid schedules? And I'm going to expand on this a little bit and say, what have you heard about kind of uniform messaging, or the appetite for uniform messaging going out to the different campuses?
I think UCOP HR kind of leaves it up to individual campuses, and the individual campuses, and then the chancellors decide. At least on our campus, it's like it's up to individual managers. So there is, I guess OP sets the guidance, but it's up to individual campuses as to how they enforce it, is my understanding. And I think that's where the inequities kind of come in, because I know in the building that I work in at UC Merced, like I have to go in 3 days a week, but there's nobody else in the building. So it's kind of like, how do we, if you leave it up to the manager, and the manager sometimes does not have all of the information or the knowledge to manage staff virtually, then how do we help those managers say, you know, we've been doing this work, we're good at doing this, we've done this. So it's working with local campus organizations and leaders to talk to them about how we could use remote work as a retention tool. I think those are the conversations that need to happen with HR, and I do know, but again, HR on our campus, HR staff is very understaffed. So all of this take work and staffing, and we just have to keep asking the same things over and over. So patience is really important here, but I think we're heading in the right direction. We just need to come together like different groups. It's not just staff assembly on each campus. Staff and faculty of color and other organizations should all come together and say, you know, we all are in different silos, and sometimes we all don't come together as organizations and make the same ask, maybe do more letter writing campaigns to our campus leaders and say, this is what we're asking. So there's more power in numbers.
I would just jump in and say, I think this is also where having a centralized understanding of what's happening from one place to the next becomes very important, because being able to say, this is something we're observing that's coming from, let's say, Irvine, we think it should be applied here, is a really powerful tool. Because if we can say, hey, there's a lot more flexibility here and it's causing us to lose employees to this location, then I think it at least forces some level of discussion. And that's why I'm really grateful we have a chance to go as a delegation. CUCSA has a chance to go to different locations 4 times a year, because we can ask certain questions about what's the model look like. And we had a really positive discussion even at Irvine in September about what the direction is. And even in the case of certain units that are more student facing, there seemed to be more broad support of having this work flexibility, which, by the way, isn't necessarily just being fully remote. There are lots of different ways you can build the culture that gives flexibility to people. So I think this is where sharing communication, even in spaces like this, is really vital. So I think the more we can be communicating broadly about these things, the better I think we all will be long term.
Leah.
Thank you. I totally agree with the whole situation with remote work. I think that I don't know why my camera's not working, sorry. There you go. But a lot of my staff are working remotely. And the thing that's really been interesting to me is that they didn't have anyone meet with them when I was out. I was out on a medical leave from October until December. And I had all my meetings moved over to my manager. And because I think it's really important, especially with my staff working remotely, that they have someone that they can talk to, discuss something with, at least once a week on a face-to-face basis, like on Zoom. And I reconnected with everyone today because I started all my meetings up again and found out that they had no meetings at all. So I think one of the issues is we have all these things in place, but if people don't, or even the management don't buy into it, it's not any good, because that is still not going to happen. And that really bothers me, because it shows that we're not paying any attention to staff recognition, which I think is really, really important. The other thing is for the representative staff, I know the union just got a major deal where they have the promotions once a year, not every other year, and also they get the raise in pay. And I'm wondering how we can piggyback on that, because that was a huge coup for the union to be able to get that for their group. And I'm wondering how we can have that also apply to the policy covered staff, because I think that's important, that the policy covered staff are not forgotten again in this whole situation. That's it.
Thank you, Leah. I see some comments in chat. Kathy, I wanted to get back to you with regards to UC Path. We are in communication with UC Path staff members and with OP leadership, and I know that they're making some hiring, so hopefully that has some impact. And I know that the director should be coming is working remote presently, but hopefully will be on site soon. And we're keeping an eye on that particular situation. Speaking of CUCSA, Naoko, with regards to the curtailment and what might be done around the vacation days associated with the curtailment, that's an issue that has been kind of bubbling up, and we're starting to hear about that. So we're going to monitor that. And then there was, Tootie, with regards to, I feel like the ability to remote work is being turned into a benefit for the employee, and that basically that, the organization is losing sight of the benefits that it provides for the organization itself and to the environment. I'll expand a little bit there.
One thing I would jump in and add too is that when it comes to remote work and flexibility, that has been something that CUCSA as an organization has been at the forefront of and has been speaking for and on behalf of through work groups for years. It's something that it was just kind of serendipitous that a lot of what we've been talking about, we had some things we could consult as we first started going remote, because we could say as an organization, we've been discussing and asking for this for literal years. And so I think that one of the points raised is that some of it has risen out of necessity, but we aren't seeing quite as much as I would like when it comes to saying, oh yeah, this has been a net benefit because it's helped in all of these different ways. It's freed up space. It's good for the environment. It helps with wellness and life balance for our employees who we know are already stressed out to begin with. So I do want to just kind of mention that's been something we've been trying to talk about for a while. But I think part of the challenge is that the decision is so, there's this phrase in academics called loose coupling, and there's been so much loose coupling given, I think, to locations, but as well as individual organizations within locations, that's where I think we're seeing a lot of the issues. And I think our challenge is figuring out how to get more centralized encouragement of this. And that's something we're working on, but I don't think we're there yet. But I will say this is just broadly, we're continuing to be a part of these discussions, and I'm hoping that eventually we can see some sort of broader discussion about how we can make this more available UC-wide.
And I also think that we don't have data, right? A lot of this is like anecdotal data when it comes to like how far somebody's traveling or how long it takes to get to campus. So I wonder, like, when the next survey is administered, maybe the question that people can answer is, how long does it take you to commute to your office? And so that becomes a part of, like, then we can build this narrative and story that, it really is being an hour and a half on the road to work from 8 to 5 and taking an hour and a half. That's a lot of time that's spent on the road. So we just have to come up with like data. I think if you don't have data to back up our stories and our narrative, then I think it's going to be really difficult to ask for change. So somehow we have to be able to capture this data. And when the survey goes out, I hope if and when we were all involved in the conversation of the new survey, that this is a question that's going to be asked. This and about healthcare too. I think those are very important questions, because I know on our campus, right, we don't have access to, not when I mean our campus, in Merced, we just don't have access to physicians, and specialists are really hard to get an appointment with. So folks really they have to take a time off, take a day off to go see a specialist out of town. So these are the comments I made when the president's search was going on, and in Merced, they came January 2020. I wrote out this thing and I read it, and the concerns are still there. None of them went away. All these issues were before the pandemic and before we all went remote, and they will continue to go on. And I think the only way we can make change or advocate for change is with data. And right now, that's the missing piece for me.
One bit of homework I'd give for everybody. I've been giving out lots of homework this last week, but one piece might be, if there are, I know we are aware of some local surveys that have been issued to gauge that. I think that might also be an opportunity, to Priya's point, if we had these data points for things that are happening that are measuring this. If you have that, I'd really encourage you to put it on our radars, either directly to us or share it through your delegate, or just build that awareness. Because, for example, coming from UCR, I'm aware of at least 2 surveys that gauged the student experiences for one of our colleges when it came to remote work. I'm also aware of another survey that happened at that location. But I think if we can start to just kind of gather this, to Priya's point, and have something we can consult and say, no, we've actually been seeing these results system-wide, then that also could help too. So I think it would be great to get the system level data, but I think if there are local level examples of this, then please put it on our radar, because there's still some validity in what's already been done.
I wanted to take a second to acknowledge Jacqueline's comment and to talk a little bit about that. She was speaking about the potential for there to be fewer resources at the state level and what impact that's going to have, and we would want some stability and stuff. And that's a conversation that we have been working towards with the president with regards to some sort of stability, some sort of compact, or whatever you might call it, but the notion that we can provide, whereas you have represented staff that receive contracts that are good for 2, 5 years, whatever they're going to be good for, we don't have that luxury, and we don't have that sense of security in our pay. So how do we get there? And so that's a conversation that we are having, and we will continue to have as we work to represent staff and advocate for staff. Additionally, I saw another thing just drop in with regards to exit interview data. There is exit interview data. I can say that CUCSA, as part of our work group committees, is trying to get some of that information so that we can kind of see where people are going and why, and so that we can have that data. But I would also underscore that I think that part of our role as amplifying the voice of staff is telling the staff story. So I think it's both. I think it's you have the data, and then you can explain how this is impacting people in the real, right? So I think I'm pretty caught up here with chat. I'll take another look. Any other folks with some questions they want to ask? Got room for probably one more. Yeah, and I think we had one final statement, at least as I'm reading there at the end, from Garen with regards to the 5% compact. We do hope that Gavin Newsom holds to the 5% compact that he's made to the UCs. That's going to be that's huge. We've had similar compacts in the past and they haven't gone very well, but we're hoping that this one holds. Seeing no other questions, I want to go ahead and bring us to a close here. Might even get you a couple minutes back on your calendar. I did want to go ahead and drop this. This is what Priya was talking about. And oops, see if I can get that into chat for everybody. It's not working very well.
I just put it in the chat.
Thank you, Priya. Awesome. Okay, so this is the system-wide town hall. I think we're all looking forward to hearing from the president. Hopefully we hear some of that affirmation for the support to policy coverage staff there. Hopefully some questions come in asking him about that. What are you going to do? I highly encourage you to submit those questions, use your voice in this moment to communicate directly to the president and hear what he has to say.
Yeah, these were like really great questions, and please submit these questions, and that will encourage us, that will allow us to have a really productive conversations. Yeah, we have a lot of questions submitted already. So the Office of the President has put tremendous amount of work into this and making it happen. It's not easy to have a town hall that goes out to all of our staff. So please, I would highly encourage you to attend it or watch it, and definitely submit questions.
Thank you, Priya, for putting this together and working to get this to come to fruition. Look forward to seeing it.
Yeah. One of my goals is, again, like to say, build relationships, because the only way you can influence or advocate is when you have those relationships. And I would encourage all of you to get involved on your campuses. I think the UC system has so many different avenues to get involved in different organizations across our 10 campuses, or even system-wide organizations. So please become part of it. And if you're shy, I was shy at one point, but now I'm not. So again, there's space for everybody.
Absolutely. So lastly, we'll end off with how to get in contact with us. And just to echo what Priya was saying, things you've heard today: engagement, empowerment, voice. So reach out. You have these, you can see what's more about us, but use these connections also if you want a voice to us. Part of our challenge is we're amplifying voices, hearing from people. What are you experiencing? What do you need? What's lacking in your experience with UC? And we work to bring those to the forefront. That we, within reason, we can bring those to the forefront with, like, the Regents, with system-wide leadership, and then on into the campus leadership. So please exercise these links, not only to find out about us, but to connect with us. And with that, I'm going to give you all a couple minutes back. Thank you all for coming and joining us, and keep an eye out for the next one. Be well, everyone.
Thank you for inviting us.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you for putting this together, Dennis. This was really good.
Yes, thank you, Dennis.